This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. I considered breaking my dry January fast on camera today, but full transparency, I went ahead and did that last night. Here's what we got for y'all. Tonight, what does the term budget reconciliation mean to you? Well, it could make or break the next COVID relief package, including those much anticipated checks. We'll explain. Plus, cracking open a bit of pandemic history to pull a lesson from the past. But first, here's what you need to know right now. Some good news. How about that? COVID-related hospitalizations are dropping across the country, according to new data from the COVID Tracking Project. Since the US started rolling out vaccines, one of the most vulnerable population groups has seen a significant decline in cases. That's nursing home residents and staff who were some of the first people to receive the vaccinations back in December. That's noteworthy because nursing homes and long-term care facilities have accounted for more than 35% of COVID deaths. Of course, this pandemic is far from over. Cases are still climbing in many parts of the US. And January marked the nation's deadliest month of the pandemic yet, with more than 95,000 deaths. And as the country works to get more people vaccinated, the US could soon approve another vaccine. Last week, Johnson & Johnson announced the results of its single-dose vaccine, which is 66% effective against contracting COVID and 85% effective at preventing severe cases. It's also easier to store and deliver.
It's very, very good with regard to cold chain requirements, namely requiring only a refrigerator. It is inexpensive, and the company is capable of making doses in the numbers of billions.
This week, Mother Nature is adding another layer of complications to vaccine distribution across the US. As a powerful winter storm moves over much of the Northeast, vaccine sites in several states were forced to close Monday.
Vaccinations are canceled today. They're also going to be canceled tomorrow. Based on what we are seeing right now, we believe that tomorrow getting around the city will be difficult. It'll be icy, it'll be treacherous. We do not want seniors, especially out in those conditions.
Hundreds of flights were canceled across the region's main airports, with several train and bus systems suspended as well. Thankfully, the magic of a snow day wasn't lost to virtual learning. Many school districts in the area still decided to give kids a day off.
It's fun for them, to get out here and just really be able to be a kid.
Over the weekend, snow also blanketed parts of the Midwest and Plains. In Oregon, some stranded cars lucked out getting stuck near a group of healthcare workers coming back from a COVID vaccine clinic. With a few doses left, they went car to car asking if anyone wanted them to avoid wasting them. Talk about being at the right place at the right time. Today, President Joe Biden met with 10 Republican senators to discuss a new COVID relief plan. Biden's proposal includes a $1,400 stimulus check, an extra $400 a week for people on unemployment, as well as billions of dollars for a national vaccine program and state and local government aid. The counteroffer from this handful of Republicans includes smaller stimulus checks, extending the $300 a week for people on unemployment, and the same amount for a national vaccine program. But instead of giving money to state and local governments, $20 billion will be given to K-12 schools. Democrats now have majority control over both chambers in Congress, but they need the support of 10 Republican votes to avoid a filibuster that could block legislation. If a deal can't be reached, Biden did leave the door open to passing the relief without any GOP support. There is a way to pass a bill without needing 60 votes. It's known as budget reconciliation. And that brings us to our next topic. As we've seen over the past year, reaching a bipartisan agreement on a relief package isn't easy. As it stands now, the two sides are billions of dollars apart. Newsy's Stephanie Liebergen explains how reconciliation could cut down on negotiations and fast-track the approval process.
We'll pass a reconciliation bill if we need it.
Reconciliation is the latest IT word on Capitol Hill. That's because it may be the best shot Democrats have at passing President Joe Biden's COVID-19 relief plan.
We're keeping all options open on the table, including using budget reconciliation.
Reconciliation is a special procedure that allows bills to pass the Senate with a simple majority, and it was designed to be used for the annual budget.
Congress begins with a budget reconciliation bill that sets out kind of the spending targets. It's a chance to take what are their spending priorities and then say what needs to change in current law to kind of fit within that framework.
It's a way to bypass the 60 votes needed to overcome a filibuster.
Over time, obviously, strategic politicians recognized that this was a great way to avoid the supermajority requirement.
The reconciliation process was used most recently to pass the Trump administration's 2017 tax cuts. It was also used to pass the Affordable Care Act in 2010 under President Obama.
Is not designed necessarily to do any of these things. It's supposed to be part of passing a budget for the country in normal order. However, it's the rules can be shoehorned to pass these types of big one-time bills.
There are restrictions on what can be passed using this procedure. Reconciliation bills can only change policies that affect government spending or government revenue, and they must be deficit neutral over 10 years.
We saw this in the 2017 tax bill. Republicans had to make big pieces of it temporary in order to get around that rule that says you can't be making big changes to the deficit outside of the budget window.
Looking at President Biden's COVID-19 relief proposal, many elements do fit the definition of government spending. Direct payments to Americans, buying and distributing vaccines, and paying for contact tracers, for example. But some Republicans in Congress say using the filibuster-proof reconciliation process does not encourage bipartisanship on Capitol Hill.
But it certainly suggests that the Democrats would not have to move legislation as close to the preferences of the legislators in the Republican Party as they would if they were passing legislation in a world where the filibuster was an option.
Stephanie Liebergen, Newsy, Washington.
Reconciliation isn't just a parliamentary procedure, it's also a good way to make sure you don't spend Valentine's Day alone. I've been snubbed for a Nobel Peace Prize again, but one nomination does feel pretty timely. Here's what's trending. The Black Lives Matter movement was nominated by a Norwegian parliament member, and I gotta say, I didn't see this one coming. He explained that he nominated the global movement for their struggle against racism and racially motivated violence. The movement, which started as a hashtag back in 2012 after the shooting death of Trayvon Martin, has grown to having chapters all over the world. The Black Lives Matter movement was particularly active last summer after the murder of George Floyd. The nominating Norwegian added that BLM's call for systemic change have spread across the world, forcing other countries to grapple with racism within their own societies. Fun fact, it's uncertain if BLM has ever been nominated before because of the Nobel Committee's strict rules on disclosing nominees. Other nominees include the WHO, Stacey Abrams, Greta Thunberg, and Jared Kushner. Myanmar is trending after the country's military seized government power through a coup and detained the civilian leader and her top lieutenants. In the midst of the chaos of trying to identify who all was detained, a military television network announced a one-year state of emergency and that ultimate authority was transferred to the army chief. The military later released a statement that said extreme steps were necessary because of what they believed to be voter fraud in elections last November. During those elections, the National League for Democracy dominated the military's proxy party. The military's statement also said that it will oversee free and fair multi-party elections after the state of emergency ends, which is in a year. Mobile networks and the internet went down in major cities, domestic flights were suspended, and the main international airport in Myanmar's largest city was shuttered. Meanwhile, trucks filled with dancing and cheering pro-military folks drove through the same cities. The Biden administration criticized the country's military and called on authorities to release government officials and leaders. In a statement, President Biden alluded to reapplying sanctions and added that the United States will stand up for democracy wherever it is under attack. Silver, the precious metal, trended today because of a moment that seemed like a brief continuation of last week's stock market craziness. The price of silver went up nearly 12% Monday morning, the highest it's been in 8 years, in what some have called a silver squeeze. If you were paying attention, you'll know that a short squeeze in this case is when the price of a stock goes like this. The price jump is attributed to retail traders on Reddit, the same community of traders that had us talking about GameStop and AMC Entertainment ad nauseum. The difference here, according to people much smarter than me, is that the price of silver was already on the rise and the silver market is harder to influence. At this point, it's probably not such a bad idea to leave CNBC on in the background and let all this stuff make its way into your head through osmosis or whatever. Over the last year, we've learned a lot about COVID-19, but this isn't the first pandemic we've learned a little something from. As case numbers ramped up and society shut down last spring, Newsy's virology series dug into some of those lessons. Now, 1 year into the pandemic and facing a late-stage surge in the virus's spread, one of those lessons is especially timely. Here's Newsy's Zach Toombs to break that down.
1918 saw the rise of a global pandemic that brought huge societal changes. That was a different time and a different, far more deadly virus. But looking at how 2 American cities handled the Spanish flu reveals an important lesson in dealing with our own pandemic. One city stopped the spread. The other created an outbreak. On September 28, 1918, 200,000 people lined Broad Street in Philadelphia for a grand parade to promote Liberty Loans to pay for World War I. Marching in the parade, troops, Boy Scouts, and marching bands led by the famous conductor John Philip Sousa. Hundreds of thousands of people all packed together, despite warnings that the deadly flu was very much active among nearby military camps. City officials and parade planners forged ahead. Within 3 days, there wasn't a single empty bed in any Philadelphia hospital. Within a week, with health services overwhelmed, the death toll had reached 4,500 people. City leaders closed down Philadelphia. By then, it was too late. But during that same time frame in 1918, a different city took a different approach and was able to flatten the curve, keeping the number of flu cases low enough that hospitals could deal with them. To understand the position these cities were in, you have to look back at the months leading up to their decisions. The virus that became known as Spanish flu first appeared in early 1918. Rampant among military bases in both the US and Europe, it spread rapidly as World War I brought opposing armies together in dire conditions. By the summer, the flu had tailed off enough that many health experts believed it was gone for good. But the fall brought a new surge of cases globally. And by September, city leaders across the US knew the flu had begun actively spreading again. St. Louis handled this information very differently than Philadelphia. Within 2 days of detecting active cases, St. Louis leaders had forced closure for schools, churches, and any public gatherings of more than 20 people. The virus still spread throughout St. Louis, but through this social distancing, the city kept its number of cases low and suffered far fewer casualties than Philadelphia.
A subsection of immigrants are waiting on Biden to do away with another Trump-era immigration policy. President Biden has spent his first weeks in office laying out his priorities and undoing Trump-era policies through executive orders, and immigration has been in focus. He's set to reverse more Trump immigration restrictions this week, and thousands of diversity visa lottery winners are hoping that he will end a pandemic freeze on many visas and green cards. Newsy's Ben Shamiso explains.
We have the visa in our passport, and we can't travel. Seriously, it's crazy.
President Biden is set to reverse Trump immigration restrictions on Tuesday, but it's unclear if he will end a pandemic freeze on many visas and green cards. Thousands of diversity visa lottery winners pray that he will, so they can use their once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to move their families to the U.S.
Life will be so lovely, so colorful. Our dreams will come true.
Ijoma Golden Kwajo lives in Ivory Coast with her husband and 2 daughters. She has applied for the lottery many times in recent years, hoping for a peaceful life in the U.S. far away from her country's political instability. A year ago, she was finally selected for the program. It allocates around 50,000 green cards each year to countries with low immigration rates to the U.S., many of them in Africa.
I was so happy, and then I was pregnant. So the first thing I did was I heard my tummy, my belly then, and I said, this baby gave me good luck.
Kwajo's good luck was short-lived. Soon after she won, Donald Trump banned the issuance of most visas, arguing it would free up jobs for unemployed Americans. Still, Kwadjo's family eventually received their visas thanks to a federal court order. But there's a catch. They can only use them if Trump's freeze is lifted, and they permanently expire in March.
The odds of being selected for this type of visa are so low that an individual who has been selected once will likely never be selected again.
A White House advisor reportedly told a gathering of U.S. mayors last week that President Biden intends to repeal the freeze soon, though the White House declined to confirm. Kwadjo knows she can't celebrate yet.
Most times now, we don't sleep. We're always on Twitter, always on searching for news, searching for new news, searching for hope.
Ben Chamiso, Newsy.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to holler at us on Twitter using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. Just a reminder, you do not get extra credit points for telling me Happy Black History Month. I don't make the rules, folks. The Summer Olympics are scheduled to begin in July, but there's still some uncertainty as to whether it'll go off without a hitch. That could also affect what happens with the upcoming Winter Olympics in 2022. National reporter Chloe Nordquist explains that even with all the restrictions and obstacles athletes are facing, some winter athletes are finding creative ways to train.
Sounds good. This is Tess Johnson's life.
I started skiing on the World Cup Tour when I was 15 years old and made the Olympics when I was 17, and now I'm here training for the 2022 games in Beijing. We dedicate our lives to this sport. We eat, sleep, breathe mogul skiing.
These athletes are the U.S. freestyle ski team's Olympic mogul skiers on what they call an on-snow training day.
Our goal is to continue training until we just can't train anymore on the snow here in North America.
The pandemic has changed how they are able to train.
We're used to skiing basically 12 months a year, and from March 2020 until December, for 8 months, we didn't have any access to a full-length mogul course for our training.
Head coach Matt Ganoza says restrictions due to the pandemic have changed the amount of training the team can get.
We had a schedule going into the year of 12 World Cup events. At this point in time, as we approach February, we've had 3 of the 12. We've seen a large number of events canceled.
Now the team operates in a bubble, traveling where they can, when they can, to get as much practice as possible without interacting with others outside their bubble, similar to how the NBA operated its basketball season in 2020.
When we bubble into a training camp or bubble into a competition, we bubble in as a team, and we become really dependent upon one another as a team in those bubbles.
We can't go to gyms. We can't go anywhere in public, and that strength training is a huge piece of our careers.
Instead of gyms, it's garages, outdoor steps, and using things around you to get in training.
We bring bands, TRXs. One of my teammates and I are using towels to pull up and try and get some resistance.
Training this year has been different for these young athletes.
This past year especially was difficult to find the motivation and, keep going when so many things were getting canceled. And it's just part of it, though. It's part of any passion.
Tess started competing at 9 years old. Participating in the Olympics has been her dream since she was a young teenager. For now, these winter athletes are training day in and day out, looking at the future of the Summer Olympics this year to indicate whether or not their competitions will take place.
As long as it happens and we get that opportunity to ski in another Olympics, I think, I'll be a happy girl.
I'm Chloe Nordquist reporting.
Most years, making V-Day plans can be tricky enough, especially if you're in elementary school. I mean, how best to give candy to your crush without your classmates finding out and shaming you with that ambulance siren chorus of, ooh? But this year, COVID is likely going to complicate things even further. National reporter Stephanie Stone spoke to some medical experts who have a word of caution for dealing with this upcoming holiday.
We've all got COVID fatigue. As we near a year's worth of shutdowns, closures, sickness, and sadness, doctors advise we carefully approach the next seasonal holiday. If possible, try not to share candy.
As much as possible, figuring out ways so that there's not a lot of hands handling any given kind of food or treat that is you're going to be eating.
Dr. Beth Thielen is an assistant professor of pediatric infectious diseases at the University of Minnesota Medical School. She's doing research on respiratory viruses and how they affect us all. While we've moved away from sanitizing our groceries and mail, we still need to be careful.
It's not just the handing the candy, directly, but it's that you have to get in close proximity to someone to have that exchange. And even if it's short term, I think it's maybe just the handing off an item. But as we think about all of the kids in a classroom doing that, it just creates lots of potential contacts where we could see transmission.
Being within 6 feet means there's more chances of sharing your air, which is how this particular virus spreads. If you're hoping for a special night out, maybe get creative and find out how to make it special at home.
What I would really like to drive home is that this is not the time to do that. I think still keeping in mind the safer home options. So, maybe making a meal for yourself at home, maybe getting takeout from a favorite restaurant and supporting a local business. Those would be much more safe options as compared to going to an in-person bar or restaurant where you're maybe dining indoors.
While there's hope on the horizon with a vaccine and lower case counts in some regions, we as a country need to get our COVID numbers down, way down.
It's really important now as we're seeing some of these different variant viruses that seem like they may be more transmissible coming up. All the more reason why we need to really double down and buy ourselves time for, to roll out vaccines, to really drive down the case counts before we start kind of getting back to normal activities.
We're all ready for it to be done, but Dr. Thielen says focus on the positive moments and make Valentine's Day unique, special, and COVID-friendly.
Valentine's Day is a time about, love and being with people that you care about. And I think, I would encourage people for all of our mental health to really, take that as an opportunity to take a pause and spend some time with whoever it is in your life that brings you joy.
I'm Stephanie Stone, reporting.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more in the loop. Same time, same place. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.